Hey, welcome back to Tech and Learning Conversations. I'm your host, Kevin Hogan. And here we are about a month into 2026, about 3 years into what some people might call the great AI takeover of ed tech. And I'll be honest, there are some days where wake up thinking, are we really going to talk about this again? But yeah, we really are going to talk about this again. It really is something that has impacted the education space. And from my conversations, there still seem to be many districts that are stuck in what I call the policy and compliance phase, hand-wringing over what could go wrong. Are the kids cheating? Are the teachers losing their jobs? The reality is there are a lot of innovative districts out there that have moved beyond that. They're not ignoring the risks, but they're not letting fear paralyze them either. Today's guests are perfect examples. Nadine, Director of Technology Integration at Franklin Township in Indiana. She's been there for 11 years. She's seen a lot of technologies come and go, but as you'll hear, she thinks AI is different. Also part of the conversation is her superintendent, Dr. Chase Oteri, who pops in. Again, these conversations are intentionally spontaneous, so I kind of had fun with this one a little bit. Together, they've spent 3 years building an AI implementation that started with teacher understanding. It moved to targeted pilots with special education and English language learners, and has now rolled out district-wide. Just listening to their insights, I think, will help any district, who, whatever stage they are, in grappling with this great new acronym of the 2020s. So have a listen. Okay, Nadine, thanks so much for joining me today. I really appreciate it. Excited for the conversation.
Thanks so much. I'm happy to be here.
And here we are, 2026, about 3 years in to the great AI takeover of all conversations when it comes to education technology. And as I mentioned before we started recording, it's like some days I wake up and I'm like, are we really going to be talking about this again? And by the end of the day, I'm like, well, we really do need to keep talking about it as it evolves and it changes. And from what I've read about your district, you've been doing some really interesting things, which kind of gets beyond the hype cycle, I guess I'd call it. Well, first it was the doom cycle, right? That it was going to take over everything, and then it became the hype cycle. And now I hope we're getting into that kind of realistic cycle. But tell me a little bit about your work with AI in Franklin.
First off, my role in Franklin Township, I'm the Director of Technology Integration, and I've been in that role for 11 years. And so I've seen a lot of different technology, come, go, and change. And so when AI started coming out, when Chat GPT first got started, I instantly, was soaking everything in and talking with our district leaders. Dr. Chase Oteri, who was our superintendent, had many conversations with him and teachers and so on. And so, really, what we started to tackle in Franklin Township with this rollout, I didn't want to let it go by. And so, when AI first came around, I spent an entire year of talking to our teachers about, what AI is and really the impact on the future tech force and the workforce, and basically why we can't run away from it, and how we really need to be proactive with this, instead of having the right kind of not having the right kind of mindset in this scenario. And so in my role, I'm classified as being like a district-wide PD person, and so I really started to weave that in. A lot of teachers think they know stuff about AI, but you've got a wide gamut. You've got some that know a ton and some that do not know much. And so me tackling that, I took it down to bare bones, and I started to notice with myself that I took an analogy of telling teachers, they were hearing about Chat GPT. Bard then turned into Gemini and Copilot. But then whenever they were hearing about it, and then all these tech tools started to come about, I had to explain to them that a tech tool is like a car. All of these different companies are cars, but underneath the hood, each one of them are connected to a large language model. And so, even starting at that basic point, really helped my teachers resonate and understand the inner workings. But really, that first year was really focused on teacher productivity because I wanted them to understand the connecting pieces. But I really felt like that first year when AI came out, that was really my focus. As we move forward, and then when you started to hear about what if a student could interact with it, of course, my guard was up. I was like, this stuff is amazing, but you better believe that I'm not going to let any student touch it unless it's FERPA, COPA compliant. They really have to prove themselves to make sure of that, which I know is at the forefront of everybody's mind. And I always tell everyone this story. It was a couple years ago, and right when all of this was coming out, I happened to be attending TCEA in Texas. And when I was there, I came across School AI. And they were the company that really resonated with me because they were solely focused on students. I knew they had things that you could do with teachers, but really, I really wanted to hone in on what can you do with students and how could AI with the student, what would that look like, and how could it actually be authentic? I didn't want it to be flashy. I wanted it to have a straight up purpose. So I learned about it, came back, it was all marinating in my mind. And I always tell everybody, I'm a mom, I have 4 kids. And out of my 4 kids, 2 of my kids are dyslexic. And my son was coming home from high school, and he was telling me that he had like homework in world history, algebra, just spouting off these different subjects. And I said, "Hey, don't you have like a curriculum tutoring class? I'm surprised you didn't do any of that there." And he said it, extremely genuine. He said, those teachers are really doing the best that they can, mom, but my resource teacher, they have to know all of that content. And, God love them, they don't know everything about biology. Like they're
Sure.
trying their best to help
Yeah.
us out. And then the next thing he said was, there's also a lot of people in that class. And so a lot of times we have to wait. And, students, they have a hard time even wanting to ask somebody for help,
Mhm.
let alone having to wait in line. So, like, all of these things. And it was like this giant aha moment. And I told him, I was like, oh my gosh, I just learned about school AI. And at the same time, it was like the perfect storm. In Indiana, they have the digital learning grant. And with the digital learning grant, you can apply for your district at this point because they kind of change it every year. The digital learning grant at that point was, is there an AI tool that you want to pilot? And do you want to try it out? And so, I'm not going to be the person that's going to immediately blast something district wide.
Yeah.
I want to have a targeted pilot approach because what I've always told people is I want to build the positive rather than spread the negative. So if I started too fast, then I would start hearing too many naysayers and it would drown out the positive. So what I did was I reached out to our special ed department at our high school and junior high, and we also have a EL curriculum tutoring class. And I told them the story and I said, hey, I want to write for this grant, but I don't want to speak for you. Do you think this would be, something that you guys are willing to do? And they, lit up. This would be amazing. I think the potential here, and that's the part, I'm sure it's because, I'm a mom and this affects even my own kids. But I'm like, this is what this can be an actual, tremendous outcome of AI. Prior to AI, we wouldn't have this capability. And that to me speaks volumes that, you can tap into this technology and do something like this.
Yeah. Well, now, how does the tool work now? I mean, it's from you talking about kind of the history of it. And you're saying before the Geminis and before the co-pilots, and now we have all of those things that are built into every tool. And I don't know what learning management system you use, or like, Can you talk a little bit about how it works in between what now everyone says they're an AI and tech company, right? Because they have
Yeah,
it's
exactly.
built in.
So, no, I'm glad you brought that up. So, I know that like first of all, we're a Google school. We're a Google school district. As far as learning management system, we use Google Classroom up to 6th grade. 7 through 12 we use Canvas. You might think because I was at ISTE last summer when Google made their announcement and they were like, "Oh my gosh, you can launch Gemini and have gems inside of Google Classroom." But here was the hugest piece that they were missing, and it's why I tell everyone like I'm not leaving school AI. Google sounded like it was all fabulous, but the problem is that the teacher cannot see the chat. If it's moderated, and I'm a Google admin for my district, only the Google admins can see the chat, and that is highly, highly problematic. And I'm not sure if people mentioned it to you after ISTE last year, but it was a pretty heated debate
Yeah.
where people were saying, are you going to turn it on? Are you not? We decided not to turn it on for that very reason, because I wanted them to have that ability for the teacher themselves to be able to see the interactions and tap into those think alouds that the kids are having to make adjustments.
Yeah. And this kind of harkens back to something I read, working up to this conversation about where you described AI safety as a design challenge rather than a compliance issue. And what you just described sounds like continuing design challenges on how to elegantly work AI into systems, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Anyway, yeah. So can you talk a little bit about that, just in terms of how you look at this as a design strategy, and then, but you also did mention FERPA and SEPA. I mean, because you still have to think about compliance, right, when it comes to putting these things together.
Yeah, I mean, in my role, I'm constantly looking at all of the policies and everything. But what really the part that I really liked was having that window with School AI to be able to see behind the hood. It wasn't just about being able to launch, a chat or something like that, but it's the insights. And that was the part when we did the pilot, and then now we have rolled it out district wide, where you can see behind the scenes what's going on and tapping into a kid's thinking. But really being able to see, I remember I had a teacher that said, we were working on a thesis statement and a kid was starting but barely had anything. But through not the chatbot doing the work, but having a meaningful conversation, showing what the outcome was, that's why you use it.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So I mean, it's really, I mean, it sounds as the technology continues to evolve at a frantic pace. You're keeping up a culture where it's like, okay, look, you're going to be using this stuff, right? And here's the best way in which to use it. Now, do you have professional development that's involved as well to help with the culture of understanding? I mean, I'll assume there must be a certain number of faculty members who still think that AI is going to either A, take their job, or B, if a kid is using it, they're cheating, right? I mean, there have to be a few left in your district. You don't have to name names.
I'm not. I mean, I've really done PD on AI. It's constant. One thing that I can even let Dr. Oteri mention as well is that we don't view AI as a initiative, and we view it as a companion in our school district. And so I think instead of presenting it to a teacher like this is something additional on your plate, seeing the benefit and the perks of it, and how it can actually help not only your position and what you do, but how it can authentically help students, really has changed the narrative for the people that would have been naysayers, if that makes sense.
Sure.
Really, when I hit it pretty hard the first year about anytime I would work with someone that would say that they may have negative feelings about AI, I keep showing them, how it's impacting the workforce. And if we're not going to do anything with it, then that means that another school district could have, the students coming out of there could have a more competitive edge.
Yeah.
And really that those types of conversations have gone well. I don't know if Chase, if you want to add anything to that.
Yeah, I'm driving, so I don't have my camera on. Once I get to a place where I can stop, I'll turn my camera on. But no, I think what Nadine's done a great job of is we've got a culture of innovation across the district. So when she talks about, AI as a companion, I look at the broader piece of this is just yet another innovation that has come through in the education world, right? Whether it was Google or YouTube or now AI, wherever bucket you want to put that in, this is another innovation. And so the culture innovation she's created is it's okay for people to try new things. And it's okay for some of those other folks to look over their shoulder, not quite dip their toes in it yet, but see what's going on next door or down the hallway. And then when they're ready, Nadine's right there ready to help them start from square one. Even though the person next door might be 10 steps down the road, they're not afraid to go say, hey, I've never even logged into this program, Nadine. Where do I start? And she's like, I got you. And so that's been the awesome thing. And the way the culture of innovation is rolled out in our district is no matter where you're at, we can get you going. And it can be great for kids.
Yeah. Speaking of the kids, I mean, is that something where you find in your district you need to introduce this stuff to them? Are they already using it? Are they using it in the right way? Could they be even? I know you had these groups of that you've put together. It's almost sounds like a mini think tank or something. Can you talk about where you're getting ideas from one another, and does that involve students?
So yes, it does. I have an AI ambassador group that is made up of because I'm a single trainer as far as ed tech across our district. But what I rely heavily on is having teacher involvement. And so I have these ambassadors, so teacher leaders at each one of our buildings. And last week we actually just had our most recent meeting where, like I kind of challenge them to try different things with AI. And then when we come together, it's a really great experience because they get to hear elementary, gets to hear high school, and so on about how they're integrating school AI. And in addition to that, this year I actually started a high school club called AI Ambassadors, where I'm having conversations with students about things because we do have for students, Gemini is blocked, ChatGPT is blocked. So if a student wants to interact on a school issued device, at school, it's going to have to be through school AI because it needs to be
Okay.
something that's moderated.
Yeah. Yeah. So there still is a kind of a walled garden approach, which you have for a lot of things from YouTube to probably other sort of mobile apps and desktops. Can you
Yes.
can you think of a specific example? Well, you talked about your son as one, but maybe another one where you had a student using AI that helped in one of your teachers um, give earlier support or to shift their approach to teaching. I guess I'm calling it
Um,
student innovator angle to it all.
Most recently, so I was at a building giving a training. I was showing how you can leverage AI with when they're in school AI and they're having a chat. I was stressing to them that if you had newcomers, you have a student that first day in your class barely can speak English, and a lot of times you may struggle because you want to make sure that the student can participate in what's going on at school. And I was at one of our elementary schools, and a third grade teacher got my training. And, I was teaching how to set up chatbots and things like that. And then she came to find me after she had just done the training with me. And she said that they had just gotten a new student that spoke Punjabi. She came down to me and she said, if you could see the look on the kid's face, because it instantly translated, and they could use that as a mean to communicate back and forth. And she
Yeah.
said, that just that just changed so much to get them to realize that. And it's often moments like that. I'm constantly telling teachers stories like that when I go to other buildings, because if someone's sitting there and saying, "Well, I don't really know how I'm going to use this," then when I start sharing those stories, and especially when it's something in my district, maybe it's a couple buildings over, then it's like, oh, well, if they're doing that, imagine what I could do. And that speaks volumes for them to hear that.
This is all fantastic insights for our readers, and I appreciate it. But maybe to finish up, I'll ask you and the superintendent, like, some advice that you would give to your colleagues who are watching this, and we'll be reading it on the blog, that we're still using AI primarily as a policy and compliance problem, which I think it's still the majority of districts out there right now, that they're still kind of hand wringing this. And so, how do they shift from that policy and compliance to one of like learning and design? What's the first step after they finish this, listening to us and writing a letter to the editor how great it was?
I'm going to let you go first, Chase.
Um, you know, I think it's once you get past the initial push of everything, those fears do subside. You really have to think about how you're going to starve the issues and feed the possibilities. If you're always living in the world of what are the issues that I'm going to deal with in this, and really it becomes catastrophizing the situation. The minute we catastrophize the situation, we are dead in our tracks. And so my advice to anybody and from the top leader down is give it a go and see what happens. I promise you that worst case scenario that is playing out in your head is not what's going to happen. Instead, what you're going to do is you're going to create this creative space for your team, i.e., in my case, Nadine and a team of teachers she has working underneath her that get to go out and be amazing because you have not put up roadblocks. Instead, you have removed those roadblocks so they can do what they do.
Great. And Nadine, we'll leave you with the last word.
So really my advice is, I've got a few things that I can share. Number one, having that support across your district. Like, I wouldn't be able to move the needle like I've been able to if I didn't have the support of my superintendent. And really, as much as I'm working with administrators, directors, people in all different types of departments, oftentimes what Dr. Oteri and I are talking about is being strategic. And he's done a great job at, showing how he's using AI in his role and really getting people in his cabinet comfortable with that. And that trickles down. And that's been incredibly helpful for me as I'm pushing that out. The other thing I also tell districts is I often feel like that people try to bite off more than they can chew in the beginning. They want to instantly go out and do the district wide. And, like I said earlier, I mean, this is year 3 of us in AI. I did like the general PD, then we did the pilot and, fine tuned how we want to, show our voice with AI. And we're really in the thick of it with this district wide rollout. But listening to teachers, getting student feedback, all of those are important pieces that really come together for that giant bit of advice I just gave you.
Yeah. No, it really terrific stuff. And as I mentioned at the beginning, sometimes I tire of talking about AI, but after this conversation, you got me all enthused again. And I think you all are our readers and our listeners as well. So thanks again for your time. Congratulations on your work, and look forward to following your continued success.
Thanks, Kevin.
Thank you so much.
So I want to thank Nadine and Chase for this conversation. What really struck me most about this conversation was about how they started with understanding, not just clicking buttons, not focused on the technology, but really grasping how the technology works. The car and engine analogy that Nadine used isn't flashy, but it's exactly the kind of foundational thinking that prevents us from being overwhelmed by every new AI product announcement that comes down the pipe. So if you found this conversation valuable, please subscribe to the Tech and Learning Conversation page wherever you listen to podcasts and share this episode with colleagues who you think might benefit from Franklin Township's example. Thanks again for listening, and we'll see you next week.